today we're going to be comparing the Exway Flex versus the Meepo V4 Shuffle versus the Backfire G2 Black and the Backfire Era. If you are new to electric skateboards, the reason why I chose these 4 specific models from these 3 very original skateboard companies is just because these 3 companies, Meepo, Exway, and Backfire, have a very long history of their development on electric skateboards, and they have come a long way ensuring that their customers are satisfied with their products. Anyways, today I will be discussing the specs of all 4 of these boards, the performance capabilities, the hill climb, the speed, all of that, and hopefully by the end of this video, if you are a new beginner to electric skateboarding or you already have experience, you guys can find out which one's your favorite. So I hope this video helps. Let's start off with the pricing of these boards. The Exway Flex right now is $599, the Meepo V4 Shuffle is $399, the Backfire G2 Black is $379, and the Backfire Era is $399. The Meepo V4 and the Backfire Era are the same price. Meanwhile, the Exway Flex is the most expensive budget board out of all of these 4. So some people might be a little unsure if they should get the Exway Flex, but all these boards have a meaning for their price. They're not overpricing any of these boards. Each board has a specific reason why they are priced at this price range. For dimensions, the Exway Flex will be the longest, widest, and tallest out of all of these boards. The Backfire G2 Black and Era V2 are actually the same size exact in dimensions. Meanwhile, the Meepo V4 will be sitting at the bottom with the shortest deck, also has the shortest stance out of all of these boards. Meanwhile, the Backfire G2 Black and Era also still sit in the middle. For the weight, the Meepo V4 Shuffle will be the heaviest board out of these 4, weighing in around 19.8 pounds, which is kind of funny because it is the smallest but it's the heaviest. Meanwhile, Exway Flex will weigh around 17.11 pounds and the Backfire G2 Black will weigh around 16.5 pounds. The Backfire Era will be the lightest out of all of these boards. Now with all these combined, we're going to talk about the deck. The Exway Flex deck is a bamboo, maple, fiberglass, tri-laminated deck. The Meepo V4, same thing with the Backfire. They're all the same combined material type of deck, just different various shapes and different sizes. The Exway Flex, Meepo V4, and Backfire G2 Black will have flex in their decks. Meanwhile, the Era has no flex at all. It is a solid composite deck made out of various materials. That is a little bit of a trade-off. I do not mind at all, honestly, having a solid deck, especially coming from the stiff carbon fiber decks that is right now generally included with the 2-in-1 category. However, with these decks, the Exway Flex actually has plastic bumpers on the front and rear end of the deck, which is a nice touch because if you did crash your board into a wall or just anything in general, the bumpers will be able to protect the deck, the wood, the material won't fracture, and the board will have a longer life in the long run. The Meepo V4 does not have this at all. I wish they would add it. The Backfire G2 Black, I do remember they used to add a rubber ceiling around the edges of the deck. For some reason on this 2022 model, I don't see that rubber ceiling on the edges of the deck, and the Backfire Era V2 will not have this as well, even though it is a composite deck, so I'm pretty sure it will be pretty strong if it were to hit something in its way. The Exway also has the most concave out of all of these decks, so it is really nice when you carve because those flares help you turn very easily and you could carve at higher speeds. The Meepo V4 also has concave. It's not as aggressive as the Exway Flex, but it's still there. The Meepo V4 Shuffle does have a drop down though out of all these boards, so it is quite interesting with the whole drop down on a budget board. It is pretty nice for going at high speeds. The Backfire G2 Black is a completely flat deck. There is no concave at all, no deck flares, no drop down, nothing at all, completely flat. Honestly though, I do not mind it at all. It is a really nice deck, and matter of a fact, Backfire G2 Black was my very first electric skateboard, and I was able to ride at speeds around 24 miles per hour with no worries at all. The new Backfire Era version 2 will have a little concave and a nice little deck flares, so that will help with carving overall. Generally speaking, I think that all budget boards should have at least a little bit of deck flares or concave, just so the rider is able to carve better at higher speeds and they feel more locked in the board board more safer. Now, excluding the Backfire era, we will talk about the flex of all three of these decks. By far, the Backfire G2 Black had the most flex out of all three of these decks. In my opinion, it will be the most comfortable deck if I were to ride on crappy roads, because the deck flex is really there. It will definitely absorb a little bit more than the Exway Flex and Meepo. The Exway Flex sits in the middle with flex. It is not too flexy nor too stiff, so it's a nice touch Exway has done. They put it right in the middle. Meanwhile, the Meepo V4 Shuffle has the stiffest flex out of all three of these decks, which makes sense because the Meepo V4 Shuffle will probably be called the sportiest budget board. But as we follow on, the grip tape the Exway Flex will use is a nice foam grip tape, the Backfire era as well. That foam grip tape will absorb the vibrations on the road, resulting in less foot fatigue. However, the Meepo V4 Shuffle and G2 Black have the regular standard grip tape. You're not gonna slide off the board. It's all nice and grippy. They're all really great grip tapes in general. And lastly, these decks will have a max load ranging from 400 pounds to 240 pounds, Exway being the highest number from what they claim on their website. Meanwhile, the Backfires will be able to withstand the least amount of weight. All decks aside, let's talk about the trucks. The Exway Flex will have a CNC forged Trist reverse kingpin truck. The Meepo V4 will have an aluminum alloy reverse kingpin truck. Backfire G2 Black and Backfire Era as well will both have aluminum. It seems like the Exway Flex is the only one that has their trucks made out of CNC and forged. CNC and forged trucks will be able to withstand better. They will be more durable, especially if they are forged trucks. So that is a nice touch you're getting with the Exway as well for its price. Meepo and Exway will have a 45-degree base plate. Meanwhile, the Backfire G2 and Era will have the 50-degree base plate. Besides those trucks, let's talk about the bushings inside of those trucks, ranging a durometer of 90 to 95A, with Backfire having the hardest durometer and Exway having the lowest durometer for their bushings. Meepo, on the other hand, is quite interesting enough. They have 92A on the front truck and 100A on the rear truck of their electric skateboard, which makes a lot of sense because the Meepo V4 is a high-speed budget board, so you definitely need that stability, especially in the rear truck. However, I do have to say the Exway Flex and Backfire Era had the nicest bushings out of all these boards, because when you go at a low speed, the board is really nimble, so you're able to maneuver and turn really easily without having to tighten too much, and you could go at a high top speed, very stable, no speed wobbles at all. Meanwhile, the Meepo V4 will be on the stiff side, so it's kind of hard to turn unless you have the bushings very loose, but a nice stiffness helps as well because this board is a high speed board and you need that stability. The Backfire G2 Black just sits there in the middle, nice standard bushings. It is also stable at higher speeds as well. Now, the wheels that these boards will utilize, the Exway Flex will have 85mm by 56mm 76A durometer wheels. This is the smallest out of all four of these boards. The Backfire G2 Black coming at 96mm by 56mm 83A durometer. The Backfire Era will have the least contact patch out of all these boards. The Meepo V4 did have 90mm wheels back then. However, Meepo has transitioned 105mm. So Meepo V4 will have the largest and widest contact patch wheels out of all of these boards, and bigger wheels will give it a more comfortable ride. But overall, so far, riding all of these boards, carving 20 to 25 miles per hour, I had no issues of sliding. These wheels are all grippy. And remember, never ride on wet roads or wet conditions. That will make your board slide and you will 100% fall. I'm glad we got the basic specs out the way. Now let's get more deeper into the electronics of these electric skateboards. Coming first, the most expensive electronic on any electric skateboard is the battery, with the Exway Flex having the largest battery out of all these options, coming at 216 watt hours using Samsung 186050 cells. The Meepo V4 Shuffle will have the smallest battery out of all these options, coming at 144 watt hours using the Samsung 186050 cells as well. Backfire G2 Black is 100 187 watt hours, also using 1860-50 cells. However, they are using Sun Power cells, which is a cell brand that is based in China. Backfire has been using this cell for all of their models, and I'm sure they are great cells as well, since they are also in the higher category performance electric skateboards that they have on their website as well. Lastly, the Backfire Era will have a 180 watt hour. However, it is not a lithium ion battery, it is a lithium polymer battery. It is not using the cylindrical cells, it is using more of a flat pack, which gives that nice thin sleek design of the Backfire Era. If you really want a short understanding of the differences between lithium ion and lithium polymer, it's really that lithium ion will have a longer expectancy. However, the lithium polymer does have more of a punch off the line. It could generally store more power at a smaller capacity. But besides these types of cells or types of batteries, all these boards are using very wonderful batteries, so these batteries will definitely be lasting a long time, so make sure you take good care of them. Looking at the charging ports, Exway Flex will have the nicest rubber cover I have ever seen. It is so discreet, you could easily just pull it up, plug in and charge, and easily it just goes back down. It just blends in with the whole battery pack. These are the small little things about Exway, like I mentioned earlier, that adds more premium quality touch of the board. The chargers will have a charge time from around 3 hours to 3.5 hours. The Meepo charger will be the largest charger out of all these chargers, coming at 3 amps, with the Exway, Backfire, and the Era coming all at 1.5 amps. However, if you wanted, Exway does have a fast charger which will charge their Exway Flex in 1.8 hours, and for the Meepo V4, if you got the 8 amp charger, you could charge that bad boy in just half an hour. That's right, half an hour. The Meepo V4 is the only board that will have a battery indicator on their battery pack. I don't know if this feature is really useful because Exway used to have the battery indicator on their Exway Flex as well. It is a nice touch anyways. Next up, the battery will give power to the motors, with Exway having 756 watt hour motors, which is the highest number out of all of these motors, with Backfire G2 Black having at 400 watts, Meepo V4 having at 540 watts, and Backfire Era having it at 650 watts. Now, if you had an electric skateboard around 2 or 3 years ago, the motor cables were very annoying because they would always stick out the ESC and they go right straight into the motor, and there was no protection for these wires, as debris or something could go and get caught up in those wires and it can mess up the motors. But with these new premium budget boards now in today's market, the Exway Flex, the Backfire, the Meepo all have some type of way to hold in that cable in. With the Exway Flex and Backfire, they do have a plastic cover that wraps around the truck arm. The wires don't have to get damaged by debris or pebbles or rocks that will hit the trucks usually. The Meepo V4 is a little different. The wires do go inside of the trucks kind of, and there's like a little plate with 4 screws that fastens the whole hub motor, goes into the truck. Quite interesting. The Exway and the Backfires, they do have a disconnect underneath the deck, so you could disconnect the cables, the motor cables. Meanwhile, the Meepo V4, you cannot do that, so you would have to actually peel off the grip tape, take off the ESC, and unplug it from there, which is a little bit annoying. I'm sure Meepo could definitely fix that as well in the future. If you are thinking about changing the sleeves on your hub motors to a more bigger wheel option, the Exway and Backfire would be using 5 screws that go in the hub motor to change out the sleeves. Meanwhile, the Meepo V4 would be using 6 screws. They are not compatible if you were to take a sleeve from the Meepo and put it on the Backfire. All these boards will have a 30 amp ESC. Exway, Backfire are utilizing Hobbywing based ESCs. Meanwhile, the Meepo is utilizing a Ling-E ESC, which has that push to start feature. Very convenient. Hobbywing ESC is by far the most smoothest, nicest ESC in terms of acceleration and braking by far. Although I do like the Ling-E ESC more in my personal opinion because it's more sensitive to the touch and it's more aggressive with acceleration and braking. That is just my preference. preference. I don't mind any of these ESCs at all. They all have nice acceleration and braking curves. Additionally, the Exway Flex is the only one that has a smart reverse function out of all these boards. The way the Exway smart reverse works is when you brake the remote, if you keep holding that brake, the board will literally start accelerating as if you were to accelerate forward. So you have to be careful when you brake. Personally, I do not like the smart reverse that much. I do like smart reverse, but I like the smart reverse that goes reverse 5 miles per hour. I'm just so used to holding the brake, so I know for sure I would be falling plenty of times. It has already happened. I disabled the feature and you would have to physically hit a button to go in reverse. The remotes on all of these boards will be using a screen. The previous generations, 2 or 3 years ago, the remotes did not have a screen, so it is actually pretty cool of how these budget boards have evolved and now all the remotes have screens on them. Each of the remotes have their own name. I'll be listing them right on the screen. I do want to talk about what each of these remotes can do. First, if we look at the Exway remote, it is the smallest remote out of all of these 4. When you turn on the remote with the singular button, it will display that nice smooth animation of the Exway logo. The Exway remote will be the only remote that will display percentage for their battery and remote battery on the remote. This is a really nice touch for Exway. Percent is just more accurate. You will be able to know how far you should go and come back. The Meepo and Backfire G2 Black remote will have similar sizes. Meanwhile, the Meepo V4 will have the largest screen out of all these remotes, which shows that nice standard Ling E display. The Meepo V4 remote is the only remote where you could adjust the brake strength and the acceleration strength on the remote. All you have to do is click the mode button to change the acceleration strength and pull back the throttle and press the mode button again to adjust the brake strength. The Backfire G2 Black is the standard hobby wing remote. A lot of other electric skateboard brands use this generic hobby wing remote. And lastly, the Backfire Era is using their newest R5 remote. You are getting this really nice remote with the OLED display, and you have various buttons on the remote with the power, the mode button for sport and eco, and the nice triangle button for the turbo mode. The Backfire by far is the only remote I know that has a physical switch for reverse. A lot of people wouldn't mind double clicking a button as well. There have been instances where people have clicked more than 2 or 3 times on the remote button and they ended up full throttling in reverse. So having a nice physical switch is a really nice touch Backfire has done. This remote used to be used for their more premium boards, and the fact that they are using this newer remote on one of their cheapest budget options just blows my mind. It is an absolute steal. Unfortunately, they don't really sell any silicone cases for this remote. The other boards will have cases sold on their websites. If you're a good owner, you don't have to worry about that. The Exway and Backfire are the only ones that have an app where you could get it on iOS or Android. Meepo has no app at all. However, it doesn't matter since you could adjust it on the remote. Now, when you get into the Backfire app, there's not much you could do. You could see the speed of your board. There's a kids mode where you could turn on, and there's also a leaderboard where you can see other riders and their total distance they have ridden. The Exway app, on the other hand, is probably the nicest app I have seen by far. You go on this app, you could adjust a lot of things, including the acceleration, the braking, the smart reverse. You could even change it from hub drive to belt drive. This is why the Exway costs this much, is because of all these features, and the app is also a really nice touch for Exway. Besides the electronics, the Meepo V4 will be the fastest board out of all these, getting up to speeds of 29 miles per hour. That is honestly crazy for a very cheap board that you could get for only $400. I have hit 30 miles per hour on this board and it is really stable. I don't get any speed wobbles at all, and it is quite crazy that you could even get a budget board that hit it at those top speeds. So if you want a nice sporty electric skateboard at a cheap price, the Meepo V4 is the one to go. The Backfire G2 Black will be the lowest one, coming at 24 miles per hour, although maybe there's some riders out there that don't want to go fast on a budget board. I don't blame them. Top speed doesn't always matter. The Exway Flex will have a top speed of 25 miles per hour, which is literally the speed limit in most cities, and the Backfire Era will have a top speed of 26 miles per hour if you press that turbo button. The hill climb for all these boards will range around 30 to 25%, with Exway and Meepo being at 30% and the Backfires being around 25%. All these companies will also have great customer service. You will get a 180-day warranty for all these boards, with warehouses worldwide, from the US all the way to Europe, all the way to Australia. If there are any defects in the electronics or the board in general, all these companies will ship out new parts to you for free in that 180-day range. And yeah, there's nothing really that could go wrong.
No, that's a race right there.
I never let go.
Oh, so this is the first time you never let go. You're not supposed to let go at all. That's just the whole point. Bro, I have to get used to it. You guys ready? Yeah.
Alright guys, I hope that race video helped, but here are my final thoughts. First thing to mention is, clearly you can see that the Backfire G2 Black was probably the slowest out of all these boards. Please keep in mind that the G2 Black has been out for 3 years already, so Backfire hasn't really changed any electronics with their whole budget board. If you were to go back in time and look at the old Meepo budget boards and the old Exway budget boards, they have also come a really long way. So you know, the fact that the Backfire looked like that 3 years ago is quite impressive, which actually kind of convinced me to get the Backfire board as my very first board back then. Hopefully they do make a better Backfire board than that, because it is a little underpowered in my opinion for 2022. However, it is still the cheapest out of all these boards, and for the rest of the boards it was pretty self-explanatory. Now, I'm not here to shame on any of these boards. What I'm really here for is to show you guys the pros and cons that each of these boards have, the capabilities that each of these boards have, because in reality everybody has their preference, and at the end of the day, it's not really about which one is the best, but which one you really like. You really cannot go wrong. If you want the fastest board, definitely go for the Meepo. If you want the most commuter friendly board, definitely go for that Backfire era. If you want the most premium board, definitely go for the Exway Flex. And if you want the most comfortable board, then go for the Backfire board. There's no way going wrong. You won't be disappointed, and get whatever board you think will be most suitable for you. If you are interested in purchasing of any of these electric skateboards, my affiliate links will be down in the description below, and my discount codes as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I tried making this video as detailed as possible. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave it in the comments below. I will answer them. Also, be sure to follow my socials. I'm usually more active there. And if you haven't yet, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more upcoming videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.